Welcome, Alan.
Well, thank you.
Welcome back to London from Rome. I hope the ACCA hasn't stacked up too many air miles for you.
No, it hasn't. Actually, the weather in London is almost as warm as it is in Rome.
So you're enjoying the 2 days of summer.
Indeed.
You've had a fantastically varied career, very international, really rich experience. What led you into the world of accounting in the first place?
Well, actually, it wasn't my first choice. My original plan was to be a doctor, but for one or two reasons in the family, I had to abort that, and I then decided it was either law, which is what my father did, or accounting, and I chose accounting because I didn't want to repeat what my father had done, because I just didn't feel that I could spend the next 30 years of my life having a discussion about legal matters with him. So I chose accounting as one of the sort of more serious and noble professions. That's what I thought at the time, anyway.
Do you think at that stage that it would provide you with such an international passport to practice?
Yes, it did. Partly because, first of all, I decided that I was going to be a finance management trainee at Unilever because I knew Unilever was a global, sort of international business with very strong roots in many continents, and therefore I chose right from the beginning to work on the global, in the global world of business. So how it developed, of course, was different to what I had anticipated, of course, but it was a choice I'd made, and it was consciously made, yes.
And what benefits do you think that international experience that you've gathered has given you in your career?
Well, first of all, I think it's made me a much more rounded sort of person, a human being. I think I've learnt how to operate in different environments. I think I've understood people much better, the different cultures that I've come across. I've had to live in and work with many people from around the world. And it's allowed me to actually take a different view and see other people's views and understand their views much better than if I had sort of grown up in a very parochial sort of single society.
Diversity as an issue is something that's very close to ACCA. It's one of our core values, and it's also one of the major themes of our Research and Insights programme. And particularly within the world of business, what do you think the current definition of diversity is? What do you think it has its key relevance to business?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, lots of people define it in different ways. For me, the starting point is its broadest definition, which means not just culture, but its skills, its experiences. Gender, of course, plays an important role, and I'm sure we'll come and talk about that later. But it's actually a very broad definition. Difference. For me, it means bringing different people together. And I do believe that doing that, you actually get a better result from bringing different cultures, different experiences, different angles, different thought processes, different challenges, in fact. I think it gives you a richer result and often a better result.
It seems to me that diversity has moved on in that sense. It used to be much more of a moral or ethical imperative. Now it has, as you say, that definition around difference, around welcoming and embracing difference, embracing challenge within a team. How did you begin to think of diversity within your role within Unilever?
Well, first of all, I've worked and lived in 7 different countries across 3 continents, so therefore I've had the privilege and honour of actually living in diverse societies. I mean, in Brazil, it's not one country, it's a very large country, and the diversity in Brazil is probably one of the richest diversities you're going to get in a single nation. For me, when I took on my most recent role as the Chief Audit Executive of Unilever, we were providing an audit service across the Unilever world. I needed to make sure that I had access to a talent pool from the world in which we needed to serve, which means I needed Africans, I needed Asians, I needed Europeans, I needed Latin Americans, I needed Americans, etc. And when I came in, I realized one thing: 90% of the people that we had in the team around the world were actually accountants. And secondly, a lot of them were from Western Europe, because that's where Unilever started and that's where its talent pool had been historically. However, the issues were not in finance, because Unilever is a pretty tightly managed business. if we're going to have any risks, they're not necessarily going to be financial risks. They're going to be more operational risks. So I had to do two things. Number one, I had to change the diversity of the skill set that we had. And I needed to bring in people from the marketing function, from the supply chain function, from manufacturing, from logistics, from IT, from the customer development space, from HR, legal. So I set about and I went to the executive and I said, look, if you want me to give you a high level of assurance that I believe you want and need, I'm going to have to change the diversity of the team. And I'm going to have to bring in lots of different professions into the audit function. That was a huge risk because we were asking marketeers to audit marketing processes. Well, you know, marketers are creative people. They like to be creative, and asking them to actually do a bit of auditing wasn't something that they joined the marketing profession to do. However, for me, I had to deliver a high-quality assurance to the business in all aspects of the business, all dimensions, and therefore we had to do it. So it was a risk we had to take, but I believed it was the right thing to do. The other thing we needed to do is to reflect the diversity of the markets that we were having to audit. So auditing in Asia, auditing in Africa, etc. We needed to make sure we had Asians, Africans, Latin Americans, North Americans in the team. So the other aspect that we had to change was actually to make it a much more diverse group of people working together, mixed teams, functionally, race, ethically, etc., etc. And the third dimension, of course, is the gender diversity, which people said you're never going to be able to crack because you can't expect people traveling around the world auditing. If they've got families, they're not going to want to spend time away from home. Well, I actually said I don't accept that. And in fact, when I left, we had something like close to 40% of the audit managers, female, probably a third, had children at home. And we just had to provide the environment which allowed them to pursue a career and also have a settled, happy family life. And that's one of the, of course, challenges of managing diversity. It's not easy to manage.
Absolutely. And it seems that you brought great changes to the team, but what kind of changes in performance and deliverables did that create? What benefits did you reap from that added diversity?
Well, I believe that the quality of the insights was much higher. I mean, when I said earlier about challenges of diversity, of managing diverse people is not easy. You get all sorts of views being expressed. You get lots of emotion. I can tell you, dealing with emotion from Latin America is different from dealing with emotion in Asia. And you've got to just make sure you understand, you get to know people much better when you have a diverse team. But you've also got to understand what works with them and what doesn't work with them. What I found, actually, having more diversity is that we got more robust challenge taking place.